Ontario Premier Doug Ford has recently announced a controversial decision to impose a 25% tariff on electricity exports to the United States, specifically targeting states such as Michigan, New York, and Minnesota. This significant policy shift has ignited discussions on both sides of the border about its motivations, consequences, and potential future developments. The primary reason behind Premier Ford's decision is a retaliatory measure against President Trump's proposed 25% tariffs on various Canadian goods. The Trump administration's move is perceived as harmful to Canadian economic interests, prompting Ontario to leverage its surplus electricity exports as a bargaining tool. Ontario produces more electricity than it consumes, leading to excess generation that is often exported at discounted rates, occasionally even paying other regions to absorb the excess power. By imposing this tariff, Ontario seeks to apply economic pressure on key U.S. states that rely heavily on Canadian electricity. Michigan, New York, and Minnesota, among others, have historically benefited from affordable and reliable Ontario energy, essential for residential, commercial, and industrial purposes. The 25% increase in electricity costs could significantly impact these states by raising energy expenses, potentially causing businesses to reconsider their operations and impacting household budgets negatively. In Michigan, industries such as automotive manufacturing depend heavily on consistent and cost-effective electricity. A sudden spike in costs might lead to increased production expenses, potentially affecting competitiveness and employment rates. New York, with its dense urban areas and high energy demands, may see electricity prices rise, affecting both consumers and critical public infrastructure. Similarly, Minnesota, known for its manufacturing and agricultural sectors, could experience higher operational costs, indirectly affecting economic growth and stability. However, the feasibility and long-term effectiveness of this measure are debated among experts. U.S. states impacted by this tariff could potentially turn to alternative energy sources, including renewable energy and domestic fossil fuel options, diminishing Ontario's leverage. Additionally, some analysts suggest that the tariff could ultimately harm Ontario by reducing its export revenues and leaving it with excess electricity that must be managed internally at additional costs. Several scenarios exist where Premier Ford might reverse his decision. Firstly, if the U.S. administration retracts its proposed tariffs on Canadian goods, Ontario could reciprocate by eliminating its electricity tariff, restoring previous trade relations. Another possibility is significant economic or political pressure from within Ontario or affected U.S. states, highlighting negative repercussions that outweigh potential gains. Domestic pressure from Ontario-based energy producers and businesses adversely affected by reduced export opportunities could also prompt reconsideration. In conclusion, Ontario's imposition of a 25% tariff on electricity exports to the U.S. is a strategic response to broader trade tensions initiated by the Trump administration. While designed to protect Canadian economic interests, this measure carries significant implications for states reliant on Ontario's energy. The decision's future remains uncertain, contingent upon diplomatic negotiations, economic outcomes, and internal political pressures that may yet shift Premier Ford's stance.